topic is the ox in the pit. And as you can imagine, this topic comes out of Luke chapter 14, verse 5, where Jesus asked a group of lawyers and Pharisees, which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit, and will not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? Why would Jesus ask them this question? And the context of it is found in verses 1 to 4 of the same Luke chapter 14, where there was a man present who had dropsy. And the Pharisees began to watch Jesus to see if he would heal this man because it was the Sabbath. And it's interesting just to think that even before the act took place, they started watching him, because they had come to an expectation that where Jesus is, healing takes place. And so when they saw somebody sick there and Jesus there, they expected him to heal. And so they were watching. Now, the Pharisees and the lawyers there had strict regard for their laws. And after all, wasn't it God who himself had given these laws to them? And therefore they wanted to be in harmony with God's will. And so they paid close attention to laws. And one of the laws said, "Thou shalt not do any work on the Sabbath." But although they paid strict attention to the laws, they were also uncomfortable with what Jesus represented. He was obviously a great teacher. He was a great healer. He was a man in whom they could find no fault. But there was something about him that made them feel uncomfortable. The presence of holiness causes discomfort to those who are unholy. The presence of Jesus, though they could find no fault in him, made them uncomfortable. Now, it is unfortunate to think that these were the leaders of the church of the time. These were the Pharisees, leading men, the elders, the pastors, the deacons. All these were the people who were supposed to be the leaders. But they felt uncomfortable in the presence of Jesus. And because they felt uncomfortable, they wanted to find some fault or other. This is the way things go in life. Sometimes when you can't find an issue, you dig around and search around to try to find something that's wrong with the person who you want to find a fault with. But Jesus first addressed the question of the law because he was dealing with law people. And so in verse 3 of the same Luke 14, Jesus asked them, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day?" Well, they were watching him to see if he would heal. So he asked them, is it lawful? In other words, is it legal? Is it in keeping with the law that you are here defending to heal on the Sabbath day? They couldn't answer him. They had no legal answer to give him. The law did not address that question at all. All the law said was that thou shalt not do any work on the Sabbath day. You see, the law has no emotions. The law has no compassion. Under the law, everything is static, cold, unfeeling. It is just straight, black and white. Thou shalt not, or thou shalt. But the law can't interpret, can't have any feelings about what's happening. Jesus used this opportunity to highlight this issue with the law. And so this is why in verse 5 now he got to the question around which our topic is based. Which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit and will not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? In other words, your law says you should not do any work, but here is an animal fallen into a pit. You have this animal, it fell into a pit, and you are assuredly going to work to take that animal out of the pit? No, they knew the answer to that question. They knew what they would do. They knew that they would most assuredly take the animal out of the pit on the Sabbath day, but they refused to answer him. You see, they realized that they were in a situation now. Jesus had shown them the difficulty with the law, so they refused to answer him. You know, if you think about an animal falling into a pit, this would evoke a sense of immediate danger and the need for prompt action. Whether it be an animal or a person, you would feel that you need to act immediately to help to rescue this one. In ancient times, in those Bible times, pits were common hazards all over the place. People used to dig pits to hide their things, to store things, because they didn't have banks and vaults and all those things that we have now. So they would go around and dig pits and hide their things. And that's probably where the concept of buried treasure comes from, where people dug pits and hid things there, and sometimes the things get left there, nobody found it. So somebody eventually one day digs it up and they find buried treasure. But sometimes they would also dig pits in order to trap animals for food or whatever else. So pits were all over the place, and it was likely for an animal to fall into a pit. But the question is, why would these legalists, why would these lawyers and Pharisees pull the ass or the ox from the pit on the Sabbath day if they had so much respect for their laws? What is it that would make them do it? I want to suggest that there are at least two reasons why they might do that. The first reason may be that they have compassion on the animal and do not want to see it suffer. If left in the pit too long, the poor animal would very likely die. And so a person who is compassionate towards animals may want to rescue that animal. And whether it be Sabbath or not, you don't want this animal to suffer and die, so you take it out of the pit. But the second and probably the more likely reason why they would take that animal out of the pit is that the ass and the ox would be very valuable to them. Jesus said, which one of you having an ass or an ox? So it's not somebody else's animal, it's yours. And it's a value. Having an ass or an ox back then would probably be equivalent to owning a car today. So today, if your car caught fire on the Sabbath day, which of you would not instantly do whatever is necessary to put out the blaze, to save your car? And so I want to believe that one of the primary reasons why people would want to rescue the animal from the pit is because they don't want to lose the value. They put value on the animals. But Jesus used this metaphor to illustrate that human need should take precedence, one, over rules and laws, and two, over possessions. Because you see, they valued the ass or the ox so much that they would certainly go contrary to their rules regarding work to rescue this animal because of the value. And yet, humanity, suffering in sin, in sickness, in pain, they would consider it a sin to help this human being out of the sickness. And Jesus was using this opportunity to point out to them that human life is even more valuable than the lives of your animals, but you are putting those animals' lives above human life. It certainly must be right to do good, to rescue people from the clutches of sin on the Sabbath as on any other day. So don't stand there watching to see if Jesus is going to break the Sabbath by healing this man with the dropsy. You should have been the ones who would, as the leaders of the church, you should have been so concerned about this man's condition that you would have been happy to take the man to Jesus and say, Lord, heal him. But no, they wanted to find fault with Jesus. This should lead us to the natural question of what is valuable to me? What is valuable to you? And not just what is valuable, But what are the levels and the layers of value we put on things in this life? Because, I believe that the majority of humans put more value on material possessions than on other human life. And sometimes they put more value on animals than humans. I see people across the globe who they're loving their animals, their dogs, their horses, their whatever, and they want to kill and maim and condemn humanity. How much value do we put on the needs of those around us? Are there any asses or oxen in pits around us? Are we ready and willing to pull these oxen and these asses out of the pits of sin, the pits of hell, the pits of degradation, the pits of not understanding the love of God to them? Today we have many people who are falling into pits because there's so much that the devil has put to confuse and to derail people's minds that they no longer can have a good concept of who God is and what He's doing for them. And brothers and sisters, we have a responsibility to take them out of the pit. The ox in the pit may be your neighbor. The ox in the pit may be your co-worker. The ox in the pit may be even a family member. Where are these animals falling into pits? And where are we to pull them out, whether on the Sabbath day or on any other day? I put it to us, brethren, that we have a mission. We have a job to do to rescue those who are fallen into pits. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Let us step up and fulfill God's purpose for us. Thank you.